Hi, I'm Michael Tabb. I'm a WGA screenwriter. I've written for Universal Studios and Walt Disney Feature Animation, and I've written a book called Pre-Writing Your Screenplay, a step-by-step guide to generating stories. I'm here to help you. Today we want to talk about premise. It's the starting stone of where you decide your story is going, what it's going to be about, and what your hypothesis is you're going to present to the audience when telling your story. It's not a theme. A theme is something like revenge or good versus evil. It's not a log line. A log line is 2 sentences and less than 55 words of you selling what your actual story is and the things they're going through. It's not plot. Plot is how you're going to tell the story. These are all words that people confuse with premise. So as a writer, you need to know what a premise actually is. And it's not about situations or characters. It's about what you want to say to the world. It's got to be original. It's got to be from you and from your heart, from your experiences. When creating a premise, there are a couple things you must do. 1, it must be 100% original. 2, it has to be provable. It has to be something you can fight over and prove to be an actual reality. It has to make sense in the situations that you're talking about. 3, it must be absolutely clear what it is you're trying to say. It's not wishy-washy. We're not using words like can, may, might, things like that. No, it's definitive. It is also an opinion. It is something that you are proving because it's something you believe and it's something that you've experienced probably in your own life. When people say write what you know, it's because you're writing about something that you have to say because you've learned it from your actual experiences. And that's what a premise is. Most importantly, it has to have a strong counter argument. Because if you don't have a counter argument to go against what it is you're trying to prove, all you're doing is standing on a soapbox and giving propaganda. A great example of a great premise goes back to William Shakespeare. He wrote a very famous play called Romeo and Juliet. I'm sure a lot of you've read it and know it. But it's about a young boy and a young girl who fall madly in love with one another, even though their families hate one another. And they're at war with each other. And they kill one another whenever they get the opportunity. But what they've done is they've fallen in love and they've broken the rules of engagement by falling in love with their own sworn enemy. In the end, these 2 lovers refuse to not be able to coexist anymore. And if they can't be together, they don't want to live. So they both wind up dying at the end of the story. The story is not about love conquers all. Love conquers all is a theme. It's a cliche. It's something that everybody thinks, oh, that works. But that's not what Shakespeare said, because love didn't conquer all. The couple didn't get to run off together. The end of the story says love conquers death. Because in their death, the pain and loss that both families feel heals the war and the wounds that have happened before them. And that was a unique way of telling a story that was against what everybody else had been saying with the cliche of love conquers all. In When Harry Met Sally by Nora Ephron, Harry believes from the very beginning that men cannot be friends with women that they're attracted to because sex always gets in the way, desire, impulse. And Sally wants to be his friend because he was the only person he was going to know in New York. And it takes him years to realize, okay, maybe we'll be friends. And the whole movie is about the idea of can men and women who can be attracted to each other actually be friends. Nora Ephron's premise throughout the movie is that men and women can be friends and lovers, even if they're attracted to each other. In fact, what she's saying is that's the only way a real relationship takes place. And that's the only way Harry and Sally can end up together, is because they needed to be friends before they were lovers, and they need to have both elements to have a happy relationship and a life together. Harry's tried relationships with other women, keeping the friendship separate. And you know what happens? They break up. They break his heart. He winds up alone every single time. And then he meets the one girl he knows he can be friends with forever, and who he has this friendship with like he's never had with any other man or woman before. And in that, he finds a relationship that can go on forever. And then love is a natural ingredient in friendship. And it's a beautiful thing. Every writer who has something to say teaches us something important about humanity, about how to live our lives. It's like that best friend on our shoulder giving us advice to help us through the hard times and to get us through to the better place we want to be. What do you want to say to your friends? What do you want to say to your family? Let's say what we don't include in there. Some of the important things I want to make sure I cover that we do not include in a premise are: we don't put the plot in there. It's much more general than that. We don't put specific characters in there. It's about what you're proving, not who's proving it. Because it doesn't apply to one person. It's a universal fact that you're going to tell them. There are no questions in premise. You're giving people answers. Your job is to give answers to the world. There are enough questions. We all have questions. We all don't know what's going on in this world. But you have answers, and that's why we're going to listen to you. We don't want anything obvious to be in there. That's why we don't use cliches. That's why we don't use universal truths. We just use truths that we realize are not something that everybody already knows in advance. We do not use qualifying words like may or might, because what good is a premise if it doesn't apply? May or might says, well, it may not always apply. When you state a premise, it needs to be something you firmly believe about the world, an opinion that carries through your whole life. One more thing I want to talk about before we end our little talk on premise, and that is that you don't need to tell people what your premise is. The premise is for the writer. And the more you bring it up in the room, the more you're giving people an opportunity to poo-poo it or change it and change what the heart of the story is. I never have a problem doing rewrites for studios or production companies because I never make the premise part of the question that we're talking about. I never make it part of the conversation. You're changing story. I never have problems doing rewrites for producers because as long as I have that thing I know I'm shooting for, which is the premise, I can always find a new way to prove it. A good premise is self-evident. You know when you walk out of Harry Met Sally that that's about men and women and how they can be friends and lovers. You know it. You know at the end love conquered death because the families get back together. Your premise doesn't need to be talked about. It's probably why they connected to your piece in the first place. So you don't need to make it a point of conversation. You don't need to pitch it. You're going to pitch story. You're going to pitch the things that sell. Premise doesn't sell. Premise is what gives us satisfaction at the end of the movie. But it's not what they're going to sell it with, so don't worry about that. For more about premise, check out Chapter 1 of my book. It's Pre-Writing Your Screenplay, a step-by-step guide to generating stories, where you can find out more about me and find the link to the book at www.michaeltabbwga.com. That's my website, and I hope to see you again and have more classes for you in the future. Have a lovely day.